Previously on Fighting for Ezekiel.
911 emergency, require police fire ambulance.
Hi, yes, my son's not breathing.
By Thursday, they were diagnosing Ezekiel with having brain death.
There was no logs of anything. There was no lab reports. We've asked for them repeatedly.
We may have never even discovered that our son had gone for over 8 minutes without oxygen in the ambulance.
He was very sick. He was septic with whatever bacteria caused his meningitis.
Her report would have went as such if she was the one that was doing it, that he died because of medical misadventure.
Well, one of the dangers, and this has been something that's talked about by a lot of defense lawyers throughout the years, is where judges pretend to be doctors.
And now the conclusion of Fighting for Ezekiel, a Bridge City News exclusive.
It has been a fascinating week hearing differing opinions on this case. Is the Crown correct in their view that the Stephans were negligent by not taking Ezekiel to the doctor sooner? Was it simply a case of loving parents who simply did not realize their son was much more ill than he appeared to be? In today's final episode, we will hear from medical experts and a lawyer who shares his legal opinion as to why the Supreme Court of Canada granted a retrial to the Stephans. We will also receive final thoughts from David and Collet on their journey. We begin, however, with our legal expert, Ari Goldkind. Ari, I understand the Crown needed to prove that the parents made a marked departure from what a reasonable parent would do in their situation. How do courts define marked departure? And where's the line? At what point are parents required to take their child in to see a doctor before being held liable?
What the case stands for, which is why the parents are getting a new trial, is it has to be something that is very clear that by not getting your child into an ambulance, into your car, you are really taking a gamble with their life rather than making a decision that under the circumstances, another reasonably prudent parent might have done the same thing. So what the Supreme Court and the dissenting judge have said, if we had 50 parents sitting around in a focus group and the symptom that we can make one up was presented, it can't be enough that 48 parents would have said, maybe we would have done the same thing. It has to be that the other 50 parents would have said, are you crazy? Of course we would have had a warning sign that the child is going to emergency.
Dr. Tina Tan is an infectious disease physician at Lurie Children's Hospital of Chicago. Dr. Tan, what are the symptoms of bacterial meningitis? In your opinion, would parents who are not medically trained be able to recognize these symptoms as being bacterial meningitis?
They may not be able to recognize that the child had bacterial meningitis, but they should recognize that the child is actually quite ill. So normally with bacterial meningitis, children or infants or toddlers should have high fevers. They can be very irritable or they can be very sleepy. If they're old enough to say their head hurts, they will complain that their head hurts. They will have some neck stiffness and maybe some back stiffness. And I know that I read somewhere that they tried to put this child in a car seat and he was very stiff and it was very difficult to put him in the car seat. So that could have been an indication that he was already having some meningeal irritation that resulted in that stiffness. A lot of times they can have vomiting. So, those are things that I think, if parents see this, it's very much out of the ordinary for a normal child to do this. And it's something that they need to seek medical attention for.
Well, that is one of the strange things about this case. There was debate in the courtroom as to exactly how stiff Ezekiel's back was. The parents argued that it was very minimal and that their son was showing mild symptoms of sickness and that he only had a fever on the first day. Terry Mainders, the RN who checked in on the toddler the day before he died, did not find any alarming symptoms other than the tiredness. The family said even though Ezekiel was still playing, he was lethargic at times. So it becomes a real challenge to sort this out. The question we all need to ask ourselves is, what would the average parent do in a case like this?
I worked in emergency for years, and I saw parents that brought their children in for things that were not necessary for medical treatment, like mosquito bites or toothaches that weren't an emergency, but yet they brought them there. And then I've seen others that were brought in that were thought to be less than fatal, and 2 days later you find out that child is passed on, or that person is passed on because of something that was missed.
Again, how can parents who don't have any medical training sort out what is serious and what is not? Dr. Tan, your thoughts?
I think the question is, how much of a change from normal was this? I mean, you said, yeah, he had some decreased activity, but he was still playing. But was it a significant decrease in activity, or, was it a significant decrease in interest in things? I mean, I think it's all relative. And, I wasn't there to see them and you weren't there to see them. So I think, it's very hard to say based upon what individuals are telling you if you don't know what the baseline is and what you're comparing it to.
If we can have a do-over in this tragic story, I think both sides truly wish that Ezekiel had been taken to the doctor much sooner. But the question remains, should everyday parents actually be sent to jail if they make a mistake in a situation such as this? 2 lower court decisions said yes, but since then, the Supreme Court of Canada unanimously granted a retrial to the Stephans. One of the reasons given was that the judge's instructions to the jury were confusing and misleading. Ari, how and why does this sort of thing happen?
You're giving lay people 300-400 page charges, and it gets extremely confusing for them because it sort of poisons the mind as to how you approach the question, which is, are the accused people in front of you essentially criminals? But what's critical here of what the Supreme Court also did is it's not just the length of the charge. And remember, as I give this answer, it's very hard to overturn a jury verdict unless, and this is a big point, the jury charge was unfair. And what the Supreme Court did is they adopted the decision of the dissenting judge in Alberta. In other words, 2 judges liked the jury's decision. 1 judge thought it was improper. Why? Because the trial judge stacked, and I'm using that word specifically, stacked the charge to look biased and skewed, and with a wink, wink, nudge, nudge, to the jury to say that trial judge really thought the parent should be convicted. So under the surface of all this, even though the words confusing or too long were used, what the dissenting judge hammered the trial judge on was how unfair and biased his charge to the jury was. And if the Supreme Court gets a whiff of that and thinks that is one of the extraordinarily unusual and rare times, a judgment will be sent back for a new trial.
We asked registered nurse and Colette's friend Terry Mainders for some final thoughts on this case.
I understand not wanting to run to the hospital for everything. Did I have concerns with Colette taking Zeke to the hospital? I was concerned that she wouldn't when I felt that he was sick enough she needed to. And I expressed that to her. I said, I strongly advise you go to the hospital. She knew I was not there to diagnose or I was there to help her out as a friend. I'm of course it's a very tragic ending, and it's sad to watch Dave and Colette have to go through what they've gone through to get to this point. However, I really believe that Dave and Colette did their very best. They did what they thought was best for their child, and I think for any of us to be bullied into trying to force things upon us that we might not believe in or might not agree with, or that the research doesn't necessarily even support, I think that that's wrong. I think you can't take away our rights as parents, and trying hard to make the choices for our children for their best interest.
The public view on this case is certainly divided, but whatever side you land on, we have to acknowledge that the Stephans do love their children, and they did love Ezekiel. These ongoing court cases have taken a significant toll both financially and personally on the Stephan family. Paul Arthur sat down with David and Collet to gather some final thoughts.
Have you ever thought, you know what, this is too hard, let's just do our community service, our house arrest, and move on?
I've never felt that way because we didn't do anything wrong. We were doing what we thought normal parents would do, that when there was a crisis and emergency, that we did what we were supposed to. We called, we trusted the ambulance.
Do you feel like you're taking one for the team, if you will, the parental rights team, saying, hey, you know what, if we don't stand up here,
exactly,
their parents could lose some rights?
Absolutely.
That's been the motivating factor. It would have been a lot easier to just, like you said, just throw it in, do the time.
Your people of faith, how much of a part has that played for you?
A big part.
It's been what's carried us through, really.
Absolutely.
It has. Without that, there would be, a lot of dark times ahead of us, and the past would have been just filled with dark. But that abiding faith that we have, and that we recognize that that what we're doing here is helping to uphold parental rights, people's choice to natural health supplements that's coming under attack. That's nothing new to us. We've been involved in that for 2 decades now. Is that, at the end of the day, we're doing something to benefit and bless God's children through this, as painful as it is.
Well, and we don't want any parent to have to experience and go through what we've had to go through. It's heart-wrenching for a mother, and I would never wish this upon any other mom.
Yeah. Now, you believe you have been treated unfairly and unjustly in this case. Have you been able to extend forgiveness? That's a hard thing to do, isn't it?
It's the most important thing to do.
Yeah.
It was absolutely necessary for our own peace. The benefactors of forgiveness are those who forgive, not those who receive the forgiveness, though it can be beneficial to them as well. But the greatest benefit is for us to be able to let go of that and get rid of that hatred and that anger. Otherwise, we would have become really dark, bitter, cynical individuals over it. We would have allowed that hatred to consume us. And, for us to be, the husband and wife that we need to be and the parents that we need to be, we had to learn to forgive. And we had to learn how to forgive real quickly. We were kind of just thrown into it with all of the hatred, with the cover-up. There's so many people that we could have held a grudge against, and we couldn't.
Okay. Now, the Supreme Court of Canada has since, again, quashed your convictions, so I'm sure that's a relief. Unanimously granted you a retrial. Any thoughts on the outcome of that trial? What do you want to see come out of that?
The truth.
She both summed it up exactly, the truth to come out. With all of the investigation that's taken place into the medical files and the discovery that there's a lot more to this case than we were ever made aware of, we just want that to be able to come out. We want to get all of the disclosure that we still haven't got, and so we're hoping, and this is supposed to be a venue where we have entitlement to that disclosure, and so we're hoping that we actually get it this time around, and that the full truth comes out, and that we truly learn what took place in regard to Ezekiel's passing. Because as parents, we want that as closure, but it's necessary also for justice, to understand what led up to his passing, so that a fair judgment can be made. So that's what we're hoping for.
David and Collet, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The new trial for the Stephans will take place in June of 2019, this time by judge alone and no jury. Much of the debate centers around who is responsible for the health and well-being of our children. There's a place for government to step in at times to defend the vulnerable. But on the other hand, at what point does the government overreach and with that undermine the rights of parents? Here's Miracle Channel CEO Leon Fontaine with some final thoughts and perspective.
There are things that seem to be going on behind the scenes that we're unaware of. But it's very concerning to me as a parent, and it should be to all of us, that the media has an ability to make a decision on a story and then to take you down that road. And I think that many of us need to wake up in this area and recognize that just because something is printed or something appears on a news station does not mean at all that that is truth. And so we need to learn to question the things that are in print, the things that we hear and see, and make sure that we have all the facts. And so I want to encourage you to not make rash judgments as a Christian, as a believer, but go after more facts. Continue, for example, to watch Miracle Channel and the things that we are producing to help you understand the situations that are happening around us. As we look at this issue of how involved should government get in our families, I totally understand, as a person who has seen many situations where children need to be protected from a drug-addicted parent or something that's really wrong, where they're being hurt, and this is awful and they need to be removed. I understand thinking this situation through. But at the same time, parents who are sharp, who are smart, who do what they can to help their kids and to look after their children, I don't want the government encroaching a lot into my rights as a parent. Right now, we're dealing with situations here in Alberta and across Canada where the government is trying to tell us what to teach our children as far as what is morality, what is right, what is wrong. And I think we need to be very aware of it. There'll be more things coming up on that topic in the future. Another one that is touched on in this case is this issue of vaccinations. And the fact that the government's trying to mandate it, is trying to make it mandatory that parents have to vaccinate their children. Yet on our programs here at the Miracle Channel, we've had doctors and scientists who literally say there is so much proof, there is a body of evidence that says that there's a lot of problems in the vaccination model. What should we do as parents who care, as thinking men and women? Well, let's keep watching. Let's be aware of what our government is doing. You and I should be following all the things that are going on in our government as they begin to legislate, or if they begin to take away our rights, our privileges. Keep watching. Be aware. Get the information that you need. Be praying as a believer for our leaders. There's great leaders in our governments that love God, and even those who don't know God yet, that have wisdom. Let's pray. And as we do this, here at the Miracle Channel, we want to continue to bring you reports. We want to bring information. We want to talk things through so that as believers across this great nation, we can operate in wisdom and even get involved right away when something needs to be done. Be praying for David and Collet, this family, this situation, and we'll continue to follow as well what is going on there. God bless you.